My sister smiled as I signed the loan papers, the ones she said would help me save my little flower shop. But weeks later, I stood in court as she sued me for every penny, pretending it broke her heart. I lost everything. My store, my name, even my dignity. And worst of all, she posted online helping my poor sister through her mess. But guess what? I'm not the naive girl I used to be. And this time, I'm planting something she'll never see coming. If you've ever been betrayed by the one person you thought would protect you, this story is for you. Tap the heart, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more true stories like this one. My name is Natalie, and I'm 39 years old. For most of my adult life, I ran a cozy little flower shop tucked away in a quiet corner of Vermont. It wasn't glamorous, and it certainly didn't make me rich, but it made me happy. I spent my days surrounded by hydrangeas, lavender, their baby's breath, and the soft buzz of bees outside my shop window. The place smelled like childhood summers and fresh beginnings. I'd greet customers with dirt still under my fingernails and leave with petals in my hair. It was simple. It was mine. And maybe if you looked from the outside, you'd think I was living a small life. But I was content, that is, until my sister Melinda came back into town. Melinda was everything I wasn't, or at least that's how she made me feel. She wore designer heels to brunch, flew first class without blinking. She married a wealthy real estate developer and made sure everyone knew it. Her life was all champagne smiles and curated Instagram posts with captions like, "Just another little weekend escape to Paris." People adored her. They called her classy, successful goals. And me, I was the sweet one, the dreamer.
The one who probably couldn't balance a checkbook if her life depended on it. Melinda had a way of making my stability look like failure, even when she didn't say a word. She'd visit my shop, look around with this fake smile, and say things like, "It's cute, Nat, but you could do so much more if you thought a little bigger." I used to brush it off. After all, we were sisters. She was the loud, sparkly one, and I was the quiet flower girl. Opposites, but still family, or so I thought. Melinda always told people I was bad with money, that I didn't understand business. It became her favorite thing to say at family gatherings. Nat means well, she'd laugh, but she's a little too sentimental when it comes to money. That flower shop is adorable, but she doesn't know what she's doing. And somehow, no matter how hard I worked, how many happy customers I had, or how steady my little business ran, her words stuck with people, even with me. Still, I loved my shop. It wasn't a gold mine, but it paid the bills and gave me purpose. But then came the storm, a string of bad weather, followed by a supplier issue that delayed my spring inventory. Sales dropped. And for the first time in years, I was scared. That's when Melinda swooped in like a savior. She walked into my shop one morning, holding a cinnamon latte in one hand and her phone in the other, all business. "You need to expand," she said. "Offer wedding packages, subscription bouquets, online sales." I told her I didn't have the funds, that I was already stretched thin. That's when she smiled and said the words that would change everything: "I'll loan you the money." No interest, no pressure, just sister to sister. I remember blinking at her, stunned. "Why would you do that?" "Because I believe in you," she said, "and because I'm tired of people thinking I don't." It felt healing, like maybe she was trying to fix things between us. So I trusted her.
I let her help me file expansion paperwork. She connected me with her husband's legal team. And soon I was signing documents I didn't fully understand, because I believed she wouldn't steer me wrong. Besides, it was still my shop. My name was on the sign. My hands did the work. But something shifted after that. She began dropping by unannounced, asking for numbers. Just checking in, she'd say, but it felt more like checking up. She questioned my choices constantly. Why did you buy so much stock this month? Why haven't you boosted your Instagram ads? Have you considered letting someone else manage operations? It was exhausting. Still, I tried to make it work. I thought if I just proved I could handle it, she'd back off. But then the unexpected hit again. A local construction project cut off foot traffic to my street for 6 weeks, and I couldn't keep up with the new costs. I was falling behind, barely able to cover my vendors. I called Melinda in tears one night asking if I could delay a payment just a little longer. That's when her voice changed. She went cold. Professional. Natalie, she said, business is business. I gave you a chance. If you can't pay, we'll need to handle it legally. I thought she was bluffing, but 3 days later, I was served. Melinda was suing me for breach of contract, and the documents I signed gave her more power than I ever imagined. Everything I had built was about to fall apart. I showed up to court in a borrowed blazer and shoes that pinched my toes. Melinda walked in like she was heading to brunch, silk blouse, glossy curls, and a polished smile that said, "I've already won." She didn't look at me once. I sat across from her, heart pounding, as her lawyer, the same one her husband used for his real estate deals, laid out the facts. According to the contract I had signed, I was in default, and she had every right to collect on the full amount immediately, plus legal fees. I tried to speak to explain what had happened, to remind her that we were family. But Melinda barely glanced in my direction. Her arms were crossed, her jaw tight, with what looked like annoyance, like I was wasting her time. "I trusted you," I whispered, when we passed in the hallway during a recess. She leaned in, her perfume overwhelming, and said with a sugary smile, "And I trusted you to run a business, Natalie. You're not a child. You signed the papers." That was the moment the scales fell from my eyes. This wasn't about helping me. This had never been about helping me. She wanted me to fail. And she wanted to be the one holding the leash when I did. In the end, I couldn't afford to fight her in court. My only option was to settle, which meant selling my flower shop to cover the debt. Melinda didn't buy it herself. No, that would be too obvious. Her husband bought it for a third of what it was worth. 3 weeks later, I drove past my old shop and saw it being remodeled into a boutique floral brand, rebranded, restructured, and marketed as a bold new flower experience for the modern woman. It made me sick. I went home and shut the curtains for days. But the worst wasn't losing my business. It was what happened online. Melinda posted a photo on Instagram of a vintage teacup filled with pastel roses from my old store with the caption, "Sometimes helping family means making hard decisions. But I'm proud to give my sister's dreams a second chance." The post went viral. People praised her for being such a good sister. They wrote things like, "Not all heroes wear capes, some wear Gucci. She didn't have to help her, but she did. That's love." Meanwhile, my inbox filled with pity messages, some from people I knew, some from strangers. "Hope you're doing okay. I heard Melinda had to step in to fix your shop. Must be hard. I guess business just isn't for everyone." I felt humiliated, erased. No one knew the truth, and even if I told them, who would believe me over her? I stopped going out. I canceled lunch plans. I even avoided the grocery store for weeks, afraid of running into anyone who might recognize me. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel grounded. I didn't know who I was without that shop, without my plants, without the smell of fresh soil on my hands. And worst of all, I felt stupid. like everything she had ever said about me was true. One night, I found myself lying on the couch, half watching an old gardening show, surrounded by unopened bills and empty tea mugs. That's when I saw a quote flash on the screen, just for a second. It was from a horticulturist, and it said, "Sometimes when a plant is damaged, you don't try to fix the broken leaf. You plant a new seed." It hit me in the chest. I sat up, rewound the show, and played that line again. Plant a new seed. That night, I took a notebook from the drawer and started sketching. Not a business plan, not yet. Just ideas. Plants I loved. Messages I wanted to share. Stories about how flowers helped people heal. I didn't have money, or a store, or a following, but I had something I hadn't had in months. Hope. Starting over at 39 wasn't part of my plan. After everything with Melinda, I moved into a tiny rental on the edge of town, a one-bedroom cottage with creaky floors and weeds growing through the porch steps. It wasn't much, but it was quiet. And for a while, that's all I needed. I got a part-time job at a local plant nursery run by an older couple named Jim and Lorraine. They paid just above minimum wage, but they were kind and they didn't ask questions. That mattered more to me than money. Each morning, I'd unlock the greenhouse at sunrise mist, the orchids prune the succulents, and lose myself in the silence of growing things. No emails, no lawsuits, no lies. Just roots and dirt and time. But even with the peace, the pain lingered. I couldn't shake the image of Melinda smiling for the camera, telling the world how she rescued me. I'd hear her voice in my head whenever I hesitated. "You don't know how to run a business, Nat. You're too soft. You need someone to make decisions for you." Some nights, I'd scroll through her social media just to torture myself. There she was, at conferences, at fundraisers, on podcasts talking about family entrepreneurship and learning to lead with heart. She even started giving talks, TEDx-style speeches about her experience mentoring her sister through a failed business and transforming it into something meaningful. She said things like, "It wasn't easy watching her struggle, but I knew I had to step in. It's what sisters do, we lift each other even when they don't realize they need help." The audience clapped. Every time. They believed her. Meanwhile, I was clipping dead leaves from ferns and trying not to cry over the price of groceries. And then came the worst moment of all. One afternoon at the nursery, I was helping a customer pick out begonias when a younger woman, maybe in her 20s, looked at me and said, "Wait, weren't you the flower shop lady from that story online? The one whose sister saved her business?" I froze. She smiled politely. That was so inspiring. "You're so lucky to have a sister like that." I mumbled something and excused myself to the back, where I collapsed onto a stool behind the bags of potting soil and let the tears fall. I had lost more than a business. I had lost my voice. My version of the story didn't exist. Not publicly, not loudly. Melinda's voice was the only one people heard. She had power, connections, a polished narrative, and me. I had dirt under my fingernails and a heart full of anger I didn't know what to do with. It wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. I tried journaling. I tried therapy. I even tried ignoring it all, pretending it didn't matter anymore. But late at night, when everything was still, I'd replay every moment, every manipulation, every smirk, every fake. "I just want to help," until I couldn't sleep. Then one rainy evening, something unexpected happened. Lorraine, the co-owner of the nursery, approached me while I was organizing seed packets. "You know," she said gently, "I've been watching you. You talk to plants like they're old friends, and customers love the way you describe each flower. You don't just sell them, you connect with them." I laughed weakly. "Well, plants don't lie to you. That helps." She paused, then added, "You ever think about teaching? Sharing what you know? You've got a gift." I shrugged. "I don't have the confidence, or a platform, or really anything." She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You have your story. That's more than enough." At first I dismissed it, but later that night, as I sat in my little kitchen, sipping chamomile tea, I thought about her words. What if I did share my story? Not the whole sob tale, not the drama, but the parts that mattered: the healing, the joy in starting over, the strength in simplicity. I opened my dusty old laptop and recorded a short video. Just me, a cup of tea, a small potted violet on the table. I talked about how some flowers only bloom after fire. I didn't mention Melinda. I didn't have to. I just spoke from the heart. I uploaded it to YouTube with the title "Starting Over in the Garden, Finding Peace Through Plants." I didn't expect anyone to watch it. But by the end of the week, the video had over 3,000 views. People left comments like, "This made me cry. Thank you. I've been feeling lost lately. This helped." You speak like someone who's been through something and survived it. For the first time in months, I felt seen. The comments on that first video were like water to dry soil. Each one whispered, "You matter. You're not invisible." So I kept going. Every Sunday, I'd sit in my kitchen or the nursery greenhouse and talk to the camera. I spoke about how rosemary helped with grief, how repotting a root-bound plant reminded me of breaking free from toxic spaces, how some seeds needed darkness before they bloomed. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't polished, but it was honest. People connected with it, especially women. Women like me burned by betrayal, rebuilding slowly. One night, I shared a story about a rare lily that blooms only once every few years. I called the episode "Some Things Take Time." And that's okay. It went viral. Suddenly my inbox overflowed. Interview requests, collaboration offers, people asking for gardening advice, but also life advice. It was surreal. Then came the email that changed everything. A woman named Amelia reached out. She was a quiet investor, focused on funding women-led businesses with purpose. She had seen my videos and wrote, "You don't just grow flowers, Natalie. You grow resilience. I'd love to help you expand that." At first, I was skeptical. Too good to be true, right? But Amelia wasn't like Melinda. She didn't come with fake smiles and hidden contracts. She was upfront, clear, and surprisingly respectful. We met over coffee. She listened, really listened. "I'm not trying to save you," she said. "You've already saved yourself. I just want to water what's already growing." With her help, I launched a small chain of garden studios, intimate spaces where people could learn about plants, healing, and self-worth. Each location had a tea corner, a planting table, and a tiny library filled with stories of regrowth. I called it Rooted. The name wasn't just about plants. It was about being grounded again, in truth, in purpose, in me. Within a year, the project took off. Not because it was trendy, but because it was real. People were tired of curated perfection. They wanted something deeper. That's when the real twist happened. One morning, I got a message from an old friend I hadn't spoken to since the court case. It was just a screenshot. Melinda's boutique floral business, the one she took from me, had quietly shut down. The caption under the closure notice: due to unforeseen financial strain and a decline in local support, Bloom and Rise will cease operations effective immediately. I stared at the screen for a long time, not out of revenge, but out of clarity. All those curated photos, the faux inspirational speeches, the illusion of control. It had all crumbled not because I fought her directly, but because the truth quietly and steadily grew back up around her. People saw through it eventually, and they gravitated towards something honest. But the final blow, the moment I knew karma had fully bloomed, came a few weeks later. I was invited to speak at the Vermont State Business Conference. The theme that year, resilience and renewal stories of starting over. I stood on stage in a simple linen dress, no designer labels or slick presentation deck. Just me, my story, and a room full of people leaning in. When I finished, there was silence, then applause. Not polite claps, thunderous, rising from their seats applause. As I stepped off stage, I spotted a familiar face in the back row. Melinda. She hadn't clapped. She hadn't even stood. Her eyes met mine for just a second, and for the first time in our lives, she looked small. Later that night, I got an email from her. It said, "I didn't expect you to come this far. I guess I underestimated you. Congratulations, Natalie. No apology, no ownership, just a sentence full of bitter surrender." And honestly, that was enough. I never planned to get revenge. Not in the traditional sense. I wasn't going to sue Melinda back, or confront her in public, or expose her lies with receipts and viral rants. That wasn't me, but life. Life has its own way of restoring balance. My focus was simple: build something real. No games, no shortcuts, just authenticity, the very thing Melinda lacked. With Amelia's support and my growing online audience, I expanded, rooted carefully. No more rushing like I did with the flower shop. This time, every decision passed through one filter. Does it feel right to me? We opened 3 more studios in Montpelier, Burlington, and a cozy one just across the New Hampshire border. Each space had the same soul, natural light, calming plants, shelves filled with journals and books about healing, and an open invitation to anyone feeling lost or left behind. And people came. So many people came. Grieving women, burnt-out nurses, divorced dads trying to learn about succulents with their kids, retired couples planting herbs for the first time. It became a movement, not a business. But here's where karma started circling back, quiet at first, then louder. Melinda, still clinging to her image of the perfect businesswoman, tried to ride the wave. She launched a sister project, a luxury brand called Petal Glow, offering overpriced bouquets with empowering affirmations on the tags. It was glossy, trendy, completely soulless. Worse, she started talking publicly about how Rooted was inspired by our family's legacy in florals, as if she had helped me build it, as if she hadn't once sued me into bankruptcy. At first I ignored it, but my audience didn't. They remembered my early videos. They knew my story, and they weren't quiet. Comments poured in on Melinda's posts. "Isn't this the same sister you took a shop from Rooted was born out of survival? Not your legacy. Maybe sit this one out, Melinda." Within weeks, her new brand was being called out online. Not by me. I never said a word, but by the people who saw through the act. Petal Glow's launch failed spectacularly. No one trusted her. Her fake warmth, her performative speeches, it all collapsed under the weight of her own ego. Then came the day the Vermont Business Monthly reached out for an interview. They wanted to feature Rooted as their cover story titled Healing in Bloom, how one woman turned pain into purpose. They even offered to shoot the photos at the original flower shop location. I hesitated. That place still hurt, but then I remembered it wasn't hers anymore. That pain wasn't a prison anymore. So I said yes. We arrived early for the shoot. I stood in front of the building. Now empty, dusty windows, faded signage. Melinda's husband had quietly sold it after the business failed. No one had touched it since. The photographer asked, "Would you like to stand inside or outside for the first shot?" I looked at the cracked sidewalk. The front door I once unlocked, with hope in my chest, and smiled gently. "Outside," I said. "I've outgrown what was inside." That line became the photo caption. It spread all over local social media. A few days later, the reporter told me Melinda had reached out furious, accusing them of twisting the narrative. But they stood by the story. We interviewed Natalie. She shared her experience. Nothing was twisted. Maybe it's just finally untangled. And here's the twist no one saw coming. At one of my new studio openings, an elderly woman came up to me and pressed something into my hand. It was a tiny hand-painted bookmark with a dried lavender sprig inside. "I was once one of your customers. Back at your first shop," she whispered. "You made me a bouquet after my husband died. You didn't charge me. You just said, 'Grief needs something beautiful.' I never forgot that." She squeezed my hand. "I'm so glad you're still blooming." It took everything in me not to cry. That was the real revenge. Not Melinda's downfall, but the proof that I had mattered all along. That the truth doesn't need to be shouted to be heard. I never exposed her, never dragged her name. But the truth bloomed louder than any lie ever could. I never confronted Melinda face to face after everything. I didn't need to. She watched it all unfold, from her failed ventures to the public praise I never asked for, to the quiet power of a woman who rebuilt from nothing. I heard she moved out of town not long after Rooted was featured on national morning television. No grand goodbye, just disappeared into the background. And honestly, that was enough closure for me. Because standing on that conference stage years after being humiliated and broken, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time: peace. Not the kind that comes from winning, but the kind that grows from knowing you didn't lose yourself trying. After my talk, someone from the audience approached me. She looked nervous, maybe in her early 20s. She said, "I don't have a sister, but I had a boss who made me feel worthless. Watching your journey, it helped me quit. I start my own shop next week." She hugged me, and in that moment, I knew. This story was never just mine. It was for every woman who was told she was too soft, too slow, too sensitive. For everyone who lost something and still found a way to grow. I walked outside that day into the Vermont sun air, crisp with fall. And as I looked across the parking lot at my Rooted van filled with seedlings, tools, and tea jars, I whispered to myself, "She planted betrayal. I planted hope. And guess which one took root?"